Welcome in, Hawks fans. Your boy Bryce Lewis back at it again for another Believe in Hawks episode. On today's episode, we're going to dive into the search for the next president of basketball operations for the Atlanta Hawks. A surprising name has been mentioned, a name from years past, potentially in the running to become president of basketball operations, plus a few other names, some you heard before, primarily everybody else you've heard before as well. So I'll give my thoughts on those people, the situation, and how big of a decision this could be for the Atlanta Hawks. So definitely appreciate you guys tuning in for another episode of Believe in Hawks. If you enjoyed the episode, definitely subscribe to the channel, like the video, leave a comment down below. Appreciate all the love that y'all give your boy. Audio listeners, same thing. Leave a rating, leave a review. Available on any podcast platform out there in case you can't watch the video version of this pod. So, and if you want to follow me on X, Bricey_2K, BRICEY_2K. You can follow me there for all my takes when stuff happens, reactions, thoughts, opinions, when I'm not on the podcast. So let's go ahead and dive right into it. So obviously, as we know, Landry Fields was fired, and now there is a search for a new president. We've heard a lot of names mentioned, and there was one today mentioned by Zach Klein, works at Channel 2 Action News in Atlanta for the sports team, mentioning some names that they are set to interview. And one of those names is a name that we are familiar with, Danny Ferry. If you remember Danny Ferry's tenure in Atlanta, he was a part of the front office and the man leading the charge who built the 60-win Hawks team. That's what a lot of people remember him for, the 60-wins Hawks team, in terms of the positive side of things. On the negative side of things, he was caught up in that situation where apparently he said some racially insensitive comments from a scouting report, which I will say in that investigation, he was cleared of the investigation, showed that he was not shown to show any bias or anything like towards that insensitive comment. So a lot of people have forgiven Danny Ferry for that and view him as a visionary still. While some people still iffy on it, just don't trust him, wonder if, maybe the investigation didn't pull out what they needed, things of that nature. And so people are skeptical. From all indications from what I have seen on social media, a lot of people are split on Danny Ferry because they understand out of all the candidates that have been listed, maybe outside of Bob Myers, he's probably the best one. But at the same time, some people don't know if he, like I said, is a good person in some people's eyes. I mean, don't forget Jeff Teague, his podcast. He's had stories about how Danny Ferry treated him basically like crap, said some mean things to him. Basically, Teague thought he was leaving Atlanta. Ferry was like, I don't want you here. And then he matched the deal. And then Teague was like, what? Okay, I guess I'm here. But the guy who was leading the charge made it seem like he didn't want me. And listen, Danny Ferry, I believe, has been just a consultant for the San Antonio Spurs for a few years now. So he's still been in the league, just not in a prominent front office role. I believe he was also general manager of the Cleveland Cavaliers. So, it's one of those things where depending on what side of it you land on, that will probably dictate if you want him on the team or not. Now, if we look at a little bit of his timeline, one thing I will say about Danny Ferry is, like I said, he did do a good job kind of building the Hawks up from 2012 to 2015-ish. Really, 2014 was his last. Well, 2015, first part of 2015 was his last, times being with the team and stuff like that. And I think for him, he hasn't, like I said, been in a prominent role. We don't know how much input he has when San Antonio makes decisions. But a lot of fans remember what he did. And a lot of fans think he can come back and still work that magic. They believe he can come back and still, take this team to the next level. Because a lot of people will say they feel like Danny Ferry was never able to truly complete his vision in Atlanta because he left literally right after that season. So he wasn't able to build on that 60-win team and try to fix whatever holes they had. And now this is a chance, and maybe in his situation where this is a chance for redemption, a chance for a second opportunity. We don't know currently how much the Hawks are considering. We don't know if he's at the top of the list. We don't know if he's at the bottom of the list. The Hawks are casting a wide net in terms of people. They are interviewing multiple candidates, just not him. But he was the name that everybody was stuck on because of the past, because he used to work here, because of the incident, because of some of the success he's had. And so he'll be the person that people are going to keep their eye on the most through this process, unless another person who interviews for the job emerges more than someone else. Because realistically, the situation with the Hawks situation, this is actually a ginormous decision that Wrestler and I'm assuming Sala, I'm assuming Corver are involved in these conversations and in interviews. Maybe even Quinn. And you're trying to find someone who everybody, or at the end of the day, it's Wrestler's decision. He's the owner. But you would assume if this is a group process, everybody is in agreement with the decision, is confident in the vision, and wants to go and try to now execute that vision for this team. You know, the Hawks are basically kind of at a crossroads with the firing of Landry Fields, because you could hire any of these guys that you're naming, and I'll name more later, but they could hire so many people. And depending on who you hire could change the trajectory of the franchise. You are at a point where you feel like you're on the precipice of being a playoff team, maybe making the right moves, maybe even further than that, maybe competing at the highest level in the Eastern Conference. But at the same time, you make the wrong moves, could potentially ruin this team's future. You have a young core that you're building around. A lot of people have been discussing on social media about what they want to do. So people who want to win now are like, trade who you need to trade. Make it happen. Some who want to win but also want to continue to build are like, I kind of want to hang on to guys, because for their sake, they say, well, we still haven't seen what this team looks like at full strength in playoff situations before we make any determinations. There isn't like we know what they are for sure, and we've seen it, and then we can make a move. We haven't because of injuries, but then the next question to that is, how long can you wait to see it? What if another guy has a major injury that's in your starting rotation? Do you wait another year after that? These are the questions and these are the decisions that the Hawks have to weigh when interviewing these guys. I will say this, though. I think that I think Wrestler understands that, you know, right now Trae Young is his cash cow. And so he's not trading Trae. I don't think any person who comes in there, unless he can just sell the crap out of it, can convince him to trade Trae. So I don't think that is on the table for any of these guys coming in, right? Danny Ferry or whoever. But, you know, the Hawks right now, I think, are doing the right thing. They're being thorough. That's why they're interviewing so many people. I know Brad Rowland, who's been on my show the last couple episodes, he basically was saying on X, he was like, he's making calls to see how legit is this? How, like, is this like he's high on the list? Like, no one knows how high the Hawks have certain people. We just know that they're willing to talk to them and they're interviewing with them. Now, two names that weren't mentioned on the list that Zach Klein made, he mentioned Danny Ferry, right? Monty McNair, Calvin Booth, Sharif Rahim. He runs the G League. He is the head guy of the G League. And Elton Brand, among others. So there's other people still that are also in that group. And obviously Danny Ferry. And so they're casting the net. Some people wish they would have had Bob Myers. Bob Myers is a situation where we heard that he's happy with his role on TV. He wants to stay on the West Coast. So with those dynamics, if that's true, you know, would that move him to want to go to Atlanta, come to the East Coast? People say just throw a boatload of money at him. Well, you got to get him to talk to you first. And then obviously Tim Conley from Minnesota. he potentially could opt out of his contract. Minnesota, I think, wants to get a deal done with him, especially if Minnesota continues to have playoff success. I don't see that also being a realistic option. So, obviously, again, when the Hawks start going through these interviews, we'll start to know what the picture looks like, what image we're getting in terms of where they're looking. We have no idea if the Hawks even started interviews. They may have just been trying to reach out to people and just create a list of people that they may be interested in. So I think that all the candidates, have something to prove. And like I said, Danny Ferry, most controversial person you could probably hire. But at the same time, one of the probably the best basketball acumen out of everybody on that list I just named. So, and like I said, whatever side you on, you think he's innocent, you think he's guilty, whatever. At the end of the day, the Hawks know what they're trying to do. If they are willing, and here's the thing with Danny Ferry too. Danny Ferry has connections to Kyle Korver and Quinn. So people are also looking at that as that could give him the leg up in this interview process because he has an actual relationship and connections to two guys already in the organization. And remember, I believe Wrestler took over after Ferry left. So, Wrestler doesn't have that same thing with Ferry. So he's coming in this maybe with a clean slate, open mind of like, hey, if he's best, he's the best. And so we'll have to see if that helps him. And then obviously some people have mentioned the Giannis connection. Ferry was one of the first people who kind of saw Giannis, liked Giannis. And so people wonder if that's a hire. Could that mean something towards the Giannis trade? Hawks trying to maybe make a move there. Again, we have no idea what's happening in Milwaukee. People are already kind of getting ready just in case that becomes something. I mean, obviously, because we don't have a firm yes or no from Giannis or from the Bucks, teams are just going to be ready. And that probably is going to freeze the free agent market. It's probably going to freeze people's markets because people are wondering what's happening with Giannis. Trade deals and trade hypotheticals have already put out there. Y'all can discuss what y'all think the Hawks should do in that regard. Obviously, Giannis, since with the type of player he is, you're probably going to have to gut your draft picks and you're going to have to give up some young players. So that is a situation where, as I've said, you're going to have to, if a new president comes in and he wants to make that move, you got to have a plan. If we traded for Giannis, how would you get around the fact that the CBA has changed? You ain't going to have as much money to work with. You have aprons that limit how you can build your team. How can we work around that and still build a team with Trey and Giannis and build towards a championship? That's one of the things that I'm sure could be potentially discussed in those meetings. I'm sure also there could be a discussion about, okay, if we kept the young guys, how are you going to build around them? Obviously Quinn's the coach, but what do you think the team needs? Where would you look? Who do you want to go after to try to help get this team where they want to go? The Hawks through the last few years have always been about collaboration and a collaborative vision. We don't know if the new basketball president comes in here and that changes that dynamic, right? Some people have even said, just give Salah the job. Just let him run the show and see how he does. Y'all talk highly of him, so why not give him the opportunity? I mean, these are all things on the table for what people want to do. So, it'll be interesting. But like I said, Danny Ferry was the first person, the biggest name. We know the success he's had basketball-wise. It'll be interesting to see if the Hawks are seriously going in that direction potentially, which, again, we won't know over probably another week or two where the Hawks' mind is. But I do want to get into some of the other candidates named in this tweet. Now, let's go to Monte McNair. Monte McNair was he was an exec with Sacramento. And he helped end Sacramento's playoff drought in 2023. He was a part of that. I believe that I think that was the Light the Beam that season, that Light the Beam season, I think. He won NBA Executive of the Year in 2022, 2023. And he's a guy who a lot of people feel like, seeing how things ended with Sacramento and how things are gone with Sacramento, I think that I haven't seen a lot of positive on him. I think some people kind of look at where the Kings are now, and that is also a reflection of what he's done. And so I think some people are kind of like, I don't know how moved I am by Monty McNair. Because you look at what he did recently. That's what you look at, and now he's unemployed, parted ways with the Kings. And so I think some people are just skeptical about it, skeptical about him, skeptical about what he can do and what he can bring to the table, which I think is fair. Some of these guys have had success in their past, like McNair, but it also did not end up working out. Seeing what the Kings were built into, do you trust McNair with the roster? Do you think he can take it to the next level? He built that core with Sabonis and Fox. Clearly, that's bottoming out right now. That may leave some bad taste in some Hawks fans' mouths and say, I might be good at McNair. Then you got Calvin Booth. So Booth was the general manager for the Nuggets. He took over for Tim Connolly after he went to Minnesota. So he became the general manager for the Nuggets. His first season was the championship year. So he was a part of a championship team. But at the same time, a lot of people have felt like since that year, the Nuggets roster has progressively gotten worse. You still have Joker. You still have Michael Porter Jr. You still have Jamal Murray. But he's let a lot of people walk that have been crucial to the success. Quintavious Caldwell-Pope, Jeff Green, Bruce Brown, to name a couple of names. And this season, I think, has been the biggest thing. Obviously, as you know, he and Mike Malone were fired this season, right before the end of the year. Like right before the season ended, he was fired. And if you look at the Nuggets now they look like they could potentially beat the Clippers in a 7-game series. But people have basically said that the roster that the Denver has is just not good enough. And people are questioning with him, why couldn't he keep some of the key guys who have been important? And it's not like the guys I just named were overly expensive. Your most expensive guy was maybe Bruce Brown? And he didn't keep any of them. And I think they've been, obviously, when you do it, you have to be able to try to replace what you lost. And Denver has struggled with that a little bit. I believe their 6th and 7th guy on the roster is on a rookie contract, and like a vet min or something. I mean, obviously you have Russell Westbrook, but and he's like your 6th guy who, obviously can play, but you have a lot of I said that Denver is a product of the CBA because they were built before the new CBA kicked into place. But, that, and then the fact that Booth didn't have a good relationship with Mike Malone. Mike Malone is a very highly respected coach. I have seen Hawks fans say if Mike Malone was available, fire Quinn and get Mike Malone. That man did not get along with Mike Malone. They hated each other, apparently. They didn't speak. That makes you wonder, is he someone you can work with? Is he someone, who can fit within a vision, a collaborative vision, Again, just because you may have some positive on your resume doesn't mean you're great at your job. And Booth is someone who, again, I'm not sure moves Hawks fans. He's someone who maybe, because again, maybe being in Atlanta, being with Quinn and being with those guys may be better for him. But like I said, he is going to be criticized for not keeping key players around for Denver. And now Denver has the roster isn't as good as it used to be, even though it's still a playoff roster. But you do have a very top-end roster with Joker, with Jamal Murray in them. So that's the big thing. Then you have Sharif. As I said, he's the president of the G League. To me, he's the wild card in this entire situation because he's basically running a league. You know, he has to be a very innovative mind to do that. But he doesn't actually have NBA executive experience. And so from being the president of the G League to running a basketball organization and making personnel decisions or being a part of that process, is that something you can trust? Because you don't have any background on him where it's like, oh, I know he can. Like everybody I've named so far has a background in personnel decisions and things of that nature. Sharif doesn't. And I think that's why a lot of Hawks fans will sour on him because they don't know. He is like the biggest unknown because at the same time, I can't sit here and tell you that he isn't good because of evidence. It's just a lack of experience. And the thing is, you hear with the Hawks when they release the releases for what they're looking for, a top-level senior executive, decision maker. So they clearly want somebody with experience. So his name being brought up is interesting. But maybe they think him being the president of the G League is good enough for them to think, I think he could run it the Atlanta Hawks and help with those decisions. So he could be a sneaky wild card in this entire dynamic of if potentially he can make a run. Or he's just a name. Hawks interview him, and we're done. So, again, another name to keep an eye on, another name to, see if that's someone that moves you. And then obviously Elton Brand. Elton Brand was a part of the Hawks back in the day. Elton, he's working in the front office with the Sixers. A lot of people, from the get-go, when they announced Elton Brand, a lot of people weren't really excited about it, if I'm being honest. A lot of people were just like, eh. Because again, you're looking at where Philadelphia is right now, and he's played a part in that. And you're just like, the last thing we've seen is your team's one of the worst in the league. And yeah, there's injuries, but your team's one of the worst in the league. Again, do you trust Elton Brand to just come to Atlanta and now all of a sudden take the Hawks to the next level when he wasn't able to take Philadelphia to the next level? That's probably one of the main reasons why a lot of fans are not on board with Elton Brand. But like I said, I'm sure there's some people who will like him. There's some people who will like him. So, those are just the names from Zach Klein's tweet about who the Hawks are set to interview. We don't know who the among others are. And like I said, Danny Ferry's the one that sticks out because he's probably the best one out of all those options. He just comes with a little bit of controversy and baggage. The team that fired you is the team that potentially could bring you back. But obviously a completely different ownership, a completely different group of people for that. And you have connections to Quinn and Kyle. So I think that the Hawks have to be diligent with this process. They have to make sure that whatever vision is being told to them, that everybody, like I said, agrees with the division and believes they'll take it. Because this decision could be the difference between them being another play-in team, potentially not being a play-in team, just being a playoff team, maybe a contending team, and a championship team. Like, that's why, like I said, the process of them doing this is so different because you have this young team with young talent, core that's young that you think is getting better, and yet you're hiring a new guy to make decisions on the team's future. So now we don't know how any of the guys I've named feel about Dyson Daniels, feel about Jalen Johnson, feel about Onyeka Okongwu, feel about Zachary Richichet, feel about Trae Young. We don't know how they feel. And obviously I'm sure the Hawks have an idea of what they want to do. So now it's just a matter of what guy fits that the best. I'd love to hear you guys' thoughts on who you think the Hawks should hire. Do you want Danny Ferry? Do you want someone else? What are your reasons? What are you thinking? I'm not going to make any judgments right now. I'm just going to let the process play out and kind of see what happens. And then then we'll see how things end up going. So we'll have to see. But I think that's about it for this episode of Believe in Hawks. I appreciate you guys tuning in for another episode for sure. Hopefully, this is a good little discussion that we had here. If you enjoyed the episode, subscribe, like the video, leave a comment down below, like I mentioned. Audio listeners, leave a rating, leave a review, 5 stars. Thank you. And follow me on X at Brycey_2K. So, big decision coming up in Atlanta Hawks land. Danny Ferry, biggest name mentioned, potential return to Atlanta. Could be someone else. We'll have to see. It's your boy Bryce Lewis. See you next time.